Kim Guillemette is going to presenting for us a year in the life of a beekeeper and the hive. Thank you, Kim.
All right, so what you guys see on the screen right now is my beekeeping CV in pictorial, so you don't have to think about it a whole lot. Down that bottom corner, I'm a member of the NCSDA, the South Carolina Beekeepers Association, the Texas Beekeepers Association, the American Association of Professional Agriculturists, and the American Beekeeping Federation. Every now and again, when I go to the Eastern Apical Society, I will join the Eastern Apical Society and make it cheaper to go to that meeting too. And there are reasons why I have so many that I am a member of. So, Master Beekeeper, I'm currently working on my Master Craftsman project, and my Master Craftsman project is to do an analysis of alternatives of mite sampling. So there's a whole bunch of different types of instructions for powdered sugar roll online. There's at least 5 or 6. I chose the top 4, and looking at how accurate each one is, looking at alcohol, looking at soap suds, looking at several different things as comparisons. And as you can imagine, I'm already tired of doing mite watches and mite samples. I have a few hundred more to go. My brand is Bartlett Bees, and Bartlett Bees, I do honey production. I've sold bees in the past. I'm not currently on the list to sell bees, but I have been in the past. I've done cutouts and scrap outs. I've done wax, and I do beekeeping services. I actually have an account right now that is very lucrative. If you can find a really good account, you can make pretty good money. I actually get $100 to just roll onto the property for my current client. So you can imagine, even with a full-time job, I keep that client. Yeah, because she tips too. Tips on top of the fee that I charge. And she's only got 6 colonies, so that's kind of nice. Bartlett Bees, can't think of anything else that we've done there. I am a honey judge candidate with the American Honey Judge Training Council. I did that because I really wanted to know, I really wanted to up my game with how to prepare, honey for sale, wax for sale, those kind of things. So I've got blue ribbons in honey, in mead, in photography. My picture one is past meeting. I've got other ribbons in poetry. I'm really proud of that one. And then wax, and I've got everything. I have entered just to play around to improve my skill set around that. I don't really have any aspirations to be a judge, although I was a judge at the last meeting we just had. Where were we? Where was that? Slick Rock. Flat Rock. We were in Flat Rock for the spring meeting, and I judged poetry and food. So that was me. I'm a past regional manager and lead beekeeper for Best Bees. Best Bees is an urban beekeeping operation out of Boston, and they work in big urban areas and do installations like on rooftops and big organizations like Fidelity, these really big money places, and they pay to have those bees on their property, and then they write it off as green. You're green. We got bees here. I really didn't like that job because I had to have a clean jacket to interact with the customer. Yeah, I had to carry a spare in the car. Right. So that I could change jackets if the customer came up and be clean. So I didn't last too long in that job. Beekeepers of the News is where I got my start. So a few years back now, the first exposure I had was coming to a bee school, and with my my family and, taking the class and signing up for our bees and buying all the stuff. Hasn't been that long ago. I was Clay Health Specialist with Bee Informed Partnership. That is how I ended up a member of the Texas Beekeepers Association, because my region was Texas, and if anybody knows anything about commercial beekeepers, if you are a Texas commercial beekeeper, that means your bees are always in North Dakota. Because that's where they spend all spring and summer to collect honey. So that's a picture of me out in the wilds of North Dakota. Probably the most fun I've ever had on any job is just driving around in North Dakota in the middle of nowhere looking at bees all day. They went bankrupt, so they are no longer in existence, but they were really, really helpful to me to learn about honeybee diseases. That was our sole purpose, to go into commercial operations, assess all of the hives at all these different locations, and give them a report about how healthy their bees were. So in fact, I was there for the beginning of the most recent die-off. Had lots of conversations with beekeepers about, I don't know where your bees are gone. There's no frames of bees in these boxes here in the fall where they were packed in the spring. We're seeing the same thing all over. And then of course, coming out of the sheds in the spring, the bees died off. My current job is at NC State. I work for Dr. Tarpey as the research apiarist, and then some of you got the opportunity to come and hang out with me last week, and it was a lot of fun. And anybody can do that, by the way. All right, so this is gonna be a year in the life of a colony and a beekeeper. Leon's back there like, it was not fun. It was all work. She made me work in the rain. And that would be true. All right, so let's start off with January. Every one of my monthly slides is gonna be set up the same. On the left-hand side, we're gonna start with what's blooming. Now, I'm not a botanist, but I don't really have a whole lot of plant background. So all I look for as a beekeeper are kind of the sentinel things, like what's the big stuff that I need to walk out of my yard and see in order to know where we are in the bloom season. So that's what we'll focus on there. The second part of that left-hand column is going to be what's going on in the colony. And it's broken down into the healthy colony and the unhealthy colony. And you guys can tell on yourselves as to like which group your colonies fall into, or maybe you've got just one colony that falls into that bottom category. Who knows? Then on the right-hand side is what is the beekeeper thinking about. And all these slides are set up. So in January, there is blooms. We see the dandelions, the henbit, and the groundsel. Groundsel is that yellow flower, gets about yay tall, got, the nice yellow flower heads, and it likes disturbed areas, so you're always seeing it along the highways. It's one of my favorite plants to see because I always spot it first when I'm going back and forth on those Saturdays to the bee school. The days begin to lengthen in January. That clock started the other direction in December and began. In a healthy colony, the queens are beginning to lay, and the winter bees become nurse bees. So their glands reactivate, and they are able to make brood food. There's lots of cleansing flights and foraging because our average temperatures during the winter are in the 50s. Really not that cold here, so lots of opportunity for our bees to fly. In an unhealthy colony, what you're seeing is a dwindling cluster, and they're getting so small that now they're not able to reach the honey. So you might open up that colony and say, my bees died, they're only the size of a softball, and there was a whole bunch of honey in there, but the cluster was no longer big enough to cover the brood and reach the honey. So that's the reason that they die. Light colonies are at risk, so you really have to really practice this time of year, walking up a honey colony, picking it up and seeing how heavy it is. anything that you can pick up from the back and tip easily is in need of food. Typically, I'll go ahead and say this out front, typically I will feed solids in January, February, and March, and I will feed liquid all the way through to December. So I'm making syrup, and I will give them syrup from spring to December. And then in those colder months, January, February, March, I'll give them either fondant or just plain sugar poured in the top, but I'll not give them a liquid syrup in that first quarter.
Why?
Because it's too cold for them to reduce the water content and cure that syrup, so that it becomes a honey or a nectar for them. Although they can collect a lot of water inside the hive and outside the hive, to be able to use the sugar that you give them. And then they control the water content right off the bat. You can do emergency inspections. You know, if your colony's dead or dying, they don't care if you inspect them. So just go ahead and do that if you're really worried. If you think the colony's dead, pop the top and take a look, and see what you see. There's not a whole lot you can do in January, but you can at least know if you've got something to clean up. It's really important for the beekeeper to do some goal setting. So what are you gonna do this year? Are you gonna be a honey producer? Are you gonna be a bee producer? And if you're gonna be a bee producer, you just wanna grow your operation, you wanna make a bunch of splits and grow your operation, or you want to sell nukes or sell queens. Maybe your goal is to become a pollinator. If you're going to do some pollination, you need to be able to make bees. If you are only in it for the hobby, it's purely about enjoyment, and your goal is just wanting to enjoy bees, not a thing wrong with that. But you may decide that you want to be, you know, like citizen science and work on different projects. I'm currently working on varroa resistance in my bees, and if you're interested in that, we'll talk about it a little bit later. All right, so your first hurdle with goal setting is thinking about reality. And you've got to figure out how much time, how much manpower, and how much money do I have to spend on this thing that I am supposed to enjoy, because equipment costs money. And then if it gets torn up, you need a replacement, you've got to spend that money again. The average box lasts 7 years. But if you're going in on the corner and prying on your corners, they ain't gonna last 7 years. They ain't gonna last 7 years, they're gonna be a lot shorter than that. Bees, you let all your bees die, you gotta buy bees again. Or you can take good care of your bees. Now you got bees coming out your ears, trying to figure out, can you take a swarm? Can you take a swarm? Honey, you could have a bumper crop of honey. You could be a honey producer and just kill it. Now you gotta figure out how am I gonna get rid of this honey? How do I sell my honey to the public? And don't forget, if you have made a bunch of honey this year and want to sell it to the club will pay for it. Treatments, you gotta buy treatments if that's the route you're gonna go. And you gotta feed your bees. It's gonna be over at Sam's. Give me the 50-pound bag of sugar for $40. Thank you, I'll take 20. This little teeter-totter will go back and forth depending on if it's a good year or a bad year. But enjoyment is the fulcrum there. And if beekeeping sucks, you won't do it very long. Second hurdle is to figure out what level of beekeeping do I want to participate in? Do I want to be like Air Tally? Air Tally is a great beekeeper, and he is treatment free. And And he is doing something all day, every day, 7 days a week with his bees, because being treatment-free takes a lot of his time. Most of us, as hobbyists and sideliners, fall in the non-synthetic or kind of natural category. And there are at least 2 research papers now that say that is the most cost-effective. We can have very healthy bees for the minimum amount of investment, and we can do very, very well. Commercial guys are up there as synthetic or conventional. If your bees get sick, you can, you give them antibiotics, or you use synthetic pesticides. And I'm here to tell you there's nothing wrong with that either. There's a time and a place for those things as well. I have to do that at work. At home, I'm a non-synthetic person. But I also love to talk to treatment-free beekeepers. They found tracheomites in Massachusetts last week. They probably found those tracheomites in treatment-free beekeepers, because most of our parasites are going to take the edge off a lot of the tracheomites. But yes, they found tracheomites. Now, here's the thing to connect in your head. Whatever your level of beekeeping, it should correlate with integrated pest management. That means if you are Darwinian or treatment-free, you get that great big block because you're doing a whole lot of stuff to keep your bees alive and healthy. You're doing the cultural things, you're doing physical and mechanical things. Unfortunately, we don't have any biological tools for varroa mites at this time, maybe in the future. If you're non-synthetic, you're coming in with the biorational pesticides. That just means the non-synthetic, that just means the biological acids and essential oils. And then all the way at the tippy top, the thing we should be using least is the synthetic pesticides. So let's talk about cultural strategies, because this is going to impact manpower, money, time in a big way. So when you select your best colonies to make your splits, when you buy local queens, and you learn how to rear queens, like Cruz has done in the club, gave a great presentation about how to rear your own queens last time. When you are culling out poor and sick colonies, then you're doing cultural strategies. Now, I want to pause here, because if you're looking for survivor stock bees, if you're looking for bees that are resistant to varroa, I really, really want you to keep in mind that varroa resistance is not the same as varroa tolerance. Varroa tolerance means you can have a sky-high mite count, and you might get off lucky this year, because it's not really the mite load, it's the viral load in the mites. That's the thing that kills your bees. The mite load is a proxy for viral load. So if you have varroa tolerant bees, they will have a whole lot of mites, but they won't look that sick because they don't have a very high viral load. But next year might be different. Next year you might have a whole lot of mites and a bunch of deformed wing virus type B, which is the very severe one that'll take your colony out. So you have to know how many mites. No matter what you're doing, treatment-free, whatever, you have to know your mite count. When it comes to defining selection of good bees, that's entirely up to you. That's entirely up to you. You might want the sweetest bees, the bees that don't swarm, or you might want the bees that swarm. You might want the bees that all survived winter, because you're like, yeah, they never winter well. The ones that make the most honey, or the ones with the lowest mite count. Currently, that's what I'm working on, is working with the bees with the lowest mite counts in my garden. And I'll go ahead and tell you, so I'm working on varroa resistance. I I skipped my spring treatment, 40% of my bees died. 40% of the bees, it's shocking, isn't it?
Wow.
So yeah, 40% of my bees bit the dust because of mites. The ones that I have left, most of them have lower mite loads, but a couple of them have very, very high mite numbers. So I have a couple of colonies that are very varroa intolerant. They are not going to make the list. The ones that have low varroa mite numbers, they're gonna make the list for splitting.
Did you separate the bees and figure out it's where you're getting the bees from? Say if you get some from a cutout or a swarm, did you figure out where you're getting that mite?
I did not. But I had, at that point in time when I kind of consolidated all the bees, I had some in Seven Springs and some in Greenville and some Pikeville, and I just threw them all together. Yeah.
I try not to do that.
Yeah, because you might have a really good line in there.
Kim, I want to ask a question, I mean, interrupt, but on your veronomite resistance, does this honeybee healthy or any of these vitamins and stuff, do you see anything with that? Is that any good thing that you're putting in this sugar water that massively helps with that?
I can only give you my personal
Right,
opinion.
right.
And my personal opinion is spend your money somewhere else.
Okay, I'm just asking.
Yeah, they really do a good job of like pushing that, but we don't really have anything on the market yet
Okay,
that is like really shown in the research to do a good thing, unless somebody here has some anecdotal experience with using any particular product.
Only thing I see with what he's talking about is the difference in the speed with which they find the sugar water, because it's got that little bit of lemongrass in it.
and they like it a lot more.
Yeah, it's 10 minutes versus 20, I mean, it's really that
So
simple.
we don't know who they're treating, are they treating
Yeah,
the owner?
they're
Are they
making us,
treating the bee?
yeah, it's like
Yeah.
making us feel better, but the bees don't care, they're gonna get to it in a minute anyway.
All right, physical and mechanical strategies. Requeening. Requeening is a good strategy that you can, improve the health of a colony. Brood interruption is always great for, a knockdown of the varroa mites. Drone brood removal using the green comb, that's another strategy. Splits without cap brood, you can be very, very meticulous and just take open brood to your, split. Screen bottom boards, it's not a lot, but there's a little bit of, mites falling down through the screen, and they're blind, they ain't going anywhere once they fall down. Powdered sugar, you can use powdered sugar on a package. Can't really use it in the colony, but you can use it on a package, and they will groom, mites. And Bob, I know this is something that you like to do, and I think it adds a lot of value when you're installing a package, because very natural, very easy, not expensive at all. Resting drawn comb. You have old comb and you rest it for 30 days, that has been shown to decrease the viral load on that comb. So the virus will not live past the 30-day mark, so you can rest drawn comb to help decrease viral load.
Kim, how that comb is stored, does that decrease it? So if you froze it first, would that
So
improve it?
freezing comb won't hurt virus.
It doesn't.
It does not, yeah, so it's time, it's a time thing.
What do you mean by rest?
Not using it in a colony, like taking it out of the colony and sticking it in the freezer,
Oh,
sticking
okay.
it on Paramount,
Okay.
but giving it 30 days with no bees on it, for the virus to die out.
Cause that's what I was thinking, if you take it out the colony, you take it out the hive, and you don't put it in the cooler, you're wasting your time.
That's right, you gotta have Paramount, or you gotta have a freezer for that. Colony spacing, they have shown like 10 feet between colonies, makes colonies a little bit healthier. Culling old drawn comb, this is something I'm really bad at, but once your comb gets kind of black, it's time to take it away. And no sharing between colonies. Where is Corby? I share like crazy.
Yes.
And every time I read that, I'm like, oh my gosh, I share between colonies. I share because that's the way I was taught. But if you really want good IPM strategies, don't share between those colonies. A weak colony needs to like poop,
Stay weak.
and a strong colony needs to stay strong. February we got the dandelions, the henbit, the dead nettle, and eastern red bud. This is when you look out across the fields and the lavender, and these are just loving it. We will see we'll see lots of pollen coming in. They've got their pollen that they collected, well, they're collecting now and in the fall, but they'll have some early pollen coming in February, and they will have early nectar. And the coolest thing about this year is that we didn't have a cold snap late in the spring, so that early nectar actually became honey pretty early. In our normal spring, we see a cold snap or two, and they'll eat that early nectar to stay warm. Unhealthy colonies, they're still dwindling, and they are starving. So if you need to feed them, feed them. For the beekeeper, your plans are made, your equipment's ready, you're going to attend the NCSBA spring meeting, which this year will be in Newburgh. Please make plans. It's usually in March, this year it's in February. You have the potential for fresh combs, so a good, healthy colony on those early nectar sources will start growing out some combs. So you can put a box on top, and they will begin that process of drawing it out. If you need to, in your big strong colonies, just do a life check, just make sure they're all kicking in there. If you've got, a need for inspections, only do it for the high risk. You're gonna look to see if they're queen right, which means don't find the queen, just look for, a solid patch of eggs. Look for resources, if you need to see them, feed them. Make sure they don't have too much room. But if they're really looking like they're gonna bust out of there, you can already do swarm mitigation at this point in time and give them that extra box and looking for pests and pests and pathogens. I think I have one coming up on that. Do not be fooled by warm weather in February. You can't buy a queen anywhere. Try not to get in that colony. We all wanted to get, what was it, the last week of February was in the 80s this year? And we're like, it's nice, open up a colony and reunite with the bees. In March, we got dandelions, henbit, dead nettle, the eastern red bud. Now we're adding native cherries, all the fruit trees are going, and the blueberries. There are varieties of blueberries that will bloom from early March all the way through like June, depending on the varietal. So if you're planting blueberries in your yard, look for the different varietals to get good coverage. Your healthy colony is getting ready to swarm because they got plenty of drones in there and they're digging it, and there's lots of nectar. So why not swarm? March is a great time. That's usually when we first start seeing the Facebook swarm. I always look for the first swarm on Facebook in March. It's very exciting. Populations are growing. Your bees are getting ready to bust out of those boxes. And we're thinking, it's March. It's not spring.
They do it in August too.
Yes, they do. I got that on there too. Yeah. Unhealthy colonies, this is when most colonies that don't have enough food are going to starve to death in March. They're like 5 minutes away from the nectar flow, and that's when they crap out. Your first inspections probably gonna be somewhere around March 1st, and you're looking for queen right. You're only looking for eggs. Don't worry about the queen, she's probably there. You've got eggs. Resources. Now, we don't live in an area where there's a pollen dearth. So I do not recommend to anybody that you feed pollen unless you have a very specific reason for doing that. Because hive beetles will come and get in your pollen patches.
Yeah.
But feeding, whether it's syrup or sugar or fondant, may be necessary in March, depending on how cold it is. You want to add room, and at this point in time, you can put room on the top. You're doing room to mitigate the swarming and pests and pathogens. This is the first time we're thinking about mites. In March, we can start thinking about mite management. Queen rearing can begin around March 31st. So here's the burrow mite cycle in March. And what you can see is we're right here before spring. So we're coming out of that dormant phase. The bee population is starting to increase. Right behind it is the burrow mite population. So what do we want to do? My favorite in the spring is forming crop. I'm totally open if you guys do other stuff. This is just what I like to do. There's two methodologies for forming crow. I do what Bob Kemper does, because I grew up in this club. I learned beekeeping in this club. So what Bob and Beverly King do, that's what I do. So Bob, when do you like to put your forming on?
I put it on in the spring, but then I got it a little bit late, and that created some problems, so. You gotta watch your timing a little bit.
So what I learned from Bob and Beverly was as late as possible, with 3 days where the temperature is less than 80 degrees. Now, when you look this up on the Formic Pro, it's gonna say 85 degrees, but I always use 80. It makes me feel better. And then I always add space. Even if I'm just putting like undrawn comb, I give them space. I put Formic Pro on a colony this past spring, and I went to the truck, grabbed the extra box, and came back with the extra box. And when I opened the lid, the queen was like walking around on the top of the inner cover, like, oh my God, because the Formic Pro was so strong. She was on the inner cover. She was out of there. So I like put her back down in the box and gave it an empty box. Formic Pro is tough.
So you use the two.
I always use 2 pads. Make sure it's more than 7. You gotta have a lot of bees in there. Give them room. And think about it this way. Everybody says, oh, it kills queens. Who cares? That queen was gonna swarm on you anyway. Her ragged tail was gonna go out the first opportunity she got, and she was gonna swarm and be gone anyway, so we don't care. Now, I've also got early as possible, because Greg Wolgemuth, who I deeply respect, he does his Formic Pro 2 pads as early as the temperature allows. So that also is something that I think is fun.
Yo, I was gonna just say, went to the meeting in Newman, and I was talking to this guy, I don't remember his name, but it's been a while ago. But he told me about doing the brood break 1st of June. No problem. I never had a problem.
Yeah, I agree
Do
with
it
you.
1st of June, it's cool.
Yeah, because a brood break will give you about a 30% knockdown in rates.
But I'm raising queens all at the same time.
Yes. If you guys don't know, Carrie's always got new boxes with queens. He's always got some queens in his pocket.
Can you back up one slide real quick? I'm sorry.
That's okay. This slide is in multiple times in this presentation as we move through the
Okay,
year.
sorry.
So, yeah, you'll get to see it again.
What did the FOB stand for?
Father of the baby.
That is very job appropriate.
That's the medical coming out, wasn't it?
Frames of bees.
This is a social organization, frames or bees.
All right, then we arrive in April, and I love April, because it's nectar flow for real. No more false starts, we are in it. And I have to tell you guys that every year, somewhere around June, someone will ask me, when is the nectar flow? I put my boxes on, and nothing's happening. That's because it starts in March, April. We got fruit trees, we got poison ivy. If you ever get the opportunity to see a mature poison ivy vine in the woods that is blooming, it is spectacular. Black locust is blooming, blackberries are blooming, holly, is blooming. Even the tulip poplar will begin to, flower. Our blueberries are out there, so it's just wonderful. Buddy, what are you thinking? Are you thinking one of these is on the wrong month? Okay, good, good. Cause I did this like off the, like just off the top of my head.
Will you share this too?
Sure. Healthy colonies, we're still swarming. We're like, swarming every day. Growing populations, like this is when we're getting to like real, you pull a frame after frame of caproot and you think, oh no, this is thousands upon thousands of bees that are going to emerge at one time. And they begin to fill the supers. Unhealthy colonies, you're going to see some EFB at this time of year. You're gonna see some chalk brood, and you're gonna see heavy viral load. So what does EFB look like? When you look, we actually had EFB at SEFs this year. When you walked in the gate, it was the colony at the end, and if you were with me, it was the one I said, oh yeah, this colony sucks. Because it had EFB. When you look at that brood, that larva should be pearly white, just shine and glisten. But if it looks dark, gray, if it's kind of slumpy, these are all early signs, that's EFB. And you can feed them, or you can get into the nectar flow, and then they will build up and they will fix that. You don't necessarily have to treat them with antibiotics if you want to be non-synthetic. You can work on them with feeding them. Chalk brood looks like little pieces of brie cheese stuck into the cells. That's another thing that nectar flow or feeding will fix. A heavy viral load, you can treat them, you can requeen them, but if you got a heavy viral load, you're likely to lose the colony. You're inspecting in April, starting about every 2 to 3 weeks. Remember, it only takes 16 days for a new queen to emerge, so your bees can swarm like lickety split, and they're either gonna requeen or they're not. So you gotta be in them a lot to catch that. Resources are coming in. When you think about room, now you have 2 things to juggle. Now you've gotta manage brood nests and the space in the brood nest, and you have to manage the honey storage. Now, bees will collect honey based on available space. So if you are anticipating with that next super, you will have a larger honey crop. If you are like putting it up there and waiting for it to fill, and they fill it, they'll kind of stop. They'll kind of stop collecting. So you want to be ahead of them. In big honey producers, these big colonies with, 2, 3, 4 honey supers, I usually do not do full inspections. It takes 3 days for them to recover the full honey collection cycle and put all of that back together. The nectar flow is only about 6 weeks, so I don't want to take away 6 days by doing a couple of inspections. So I just do life checks. I go into the top box. If it's absolutely crammed full of bees, I close it up. and there's very few bees, then I go down one box. It's either gonna be full or empty of bees. If it's full, I put everything back. If it's not got a lot of bees, I go down one more. And I go down until I figure out that I'm either okay with this colony or not. But I'm only doing life checks on the big honey producers. I don't want to stop them. But I wanna be absolutely certain they're still queen rate. And you can only do that by looking at, numbers of bees.
I was gonna say, you know, a lot of times when people go into their bees, they got the habit of getting that smoker. And when they put that smoke on there, it forces the bees down. So you wanna have a light bee population on the top.
Yeah.
They got to understand that.
Yeah, your smoker is not to create a forest fire condition for your bees. They should not be like running screaming through the hive. Fire! It's really communication, it's just communication. Like if you wanna put your hands there, then puff, 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 and then you can put your fingers there. That is really what smoke is for, it's just a little communication. If bees get kinda rowdy, well then you can kinda knock them down. If they really come out to eat your lunch, then you can do the forest fire. And if there's still too much, close them up and go home.
That's right.
I mean, nobody wants to be stuck up. Queen excluders. How many people use queen excluders? Okay, not that many, but a few. Yeah, I use queen excluders in all of the colonies that I manage at work. Every last one of them. I use 0 queen excluders in the ones that I have at home. So I can do it either way. But I will tell you that if you want to use queen excluders, you have to let those bees get into that super and get really attached to that super, and then put the queen excluder in. So the queen may even go up there and lay. Then you can put in your queen excluder, make sure she's not in there. And then when those bees emerge, they will backfill that super. And that is the best way to use a queen excluder.
At work, how many brood chambers do y'all use?
I use 2 deep.
Okay.
It's all of the colonies are double deep. Although I will tell you that I have combined some colonies and I do have some triple deeps right now.
And do you rotate them in the spring?
I do not reverse boxes. I have a feeder in the bottom, I have a division board feeder in the bottom, so there's 8 frames in the bottom and 10 in the second. The queen will eventually go back downstairs, so I don't tend.
Especially with an excluder, because mine just go up.
Yeah, they'll chimney, they'll chimney if you give them a place to go sometimes. But at seps where we're not using a lot of excluders, sometimes I will pull the box out, drop the brood nest down, stick that box back on the brood nest, and then put the honey supers back on. So I do think it is about whether you're using excluders or not.
Right, and so, I mean, like I have 2 deeps that I want for the brood chamber, but then I have the queen still up in a super lane, so if I wanna switch that, that'd be a good time to use an excluder just to,
Yeah, so
force her
you
back down.
can put in that excluder, grab her little butt and move her down below it.
yeah.
And they'll take care of that brood, long enough. Any other questions about April? Now, we do this whole thing about where to put the super on top. No, take the heavy super and lift it up and put the empty one on the bottom. We do a whole lot about that, but the latest research I've seen says that's all.
Doesn't matter.
You remember you said back, you said about when you pick the frames up and you got a lot of bees and a lot of brood. I use that time to equalize my boxes. That's the best time to do it.
Yeah.
If you know you got a weak hive, you fix your problem right then.
Yeah. So, 2 things to think about. If you are heavily into treatment-free and you're using mechanical strategies for integrated pest management, you're not gonna share resources, you're not gonna equalize your boxes. If that is less important to you, and it may be less important that day,
Yeah.
then you can equalize your boxes. A lot of of the commercial guys will equalize the boxes, and that just means that if this box over here has 8 frames of cat brood, and this one only has 2, well, I need to move some of this cat brood over here and put some of this empty comb over here so that they're both the same, and the queens can keep on
Yeah,
laying.
and I mean,
Otherwise, that was gonna
I
swarm.
mean, the truth is, most of us are pretty small, so I mean, that's the only way you can.
Keep
Just
both
to
of
with
them
what
going.
you got. I
Yeah,
mean, you know,
yeah, you
even
keep
if-
both of them going that way. But I do think the magic number, and this is something James Dove said years ago that really stuck with me. Once you get about to 5 to 7 colonies, you can be completely independent. You no longer have to buy bees if you can take care of 5 to 7 colonies and keep them healthy.
I can't agree, I mean, that's right.
2,
I came in this year with 1.5.
oh,
And
you're
I'm-
still
and I'm-
done?
I'm just up to 10, but it's no big
But I mean,
deal.
it's right, I mean, I think he's right though. five
He's
minutes.
a 10 for 1.5.
No, no,
But-
But no big deal.
Right.
All right, May comes in. We got white clover blooming, we got the crab apples, holly. These are those days where people are calling us and saying, I got a holly tree in my yard and I think there was a swarm in it because it's so full of bees. But there's lots of varieties of holly, so you can get early bloomers, you can get late bloomers.
With the holly tree now, you got to check it, because they love to swarm in.
They have to swarm.
They do, yeah, that's right.
Privet, there's a couple types of privet. Privet is ligustrum, and typically what we see on the roadside is the Chinese privet. Tulip poplar is really doing good this time of year. Blueberries and sumac. So there's about 3 varietals of sumac. There's an early bloomer, mid-season bloomer, and a late season bloomer. So we'll see sumac on these slides a lot. But they are about 6 different varietals that we're talking about. A healthy colony, they might still be swarming. I had a colony swarm to death, and it just swarmed and swarmed and swarmed. And at the time, Kirby said, you better be careful because it's gonna swarm to death. And I was like, can do that? Yeah, I can. So the nurse bees will hold the queens from fighting and killing each other, and then they will issue after swarms with the virgins. If they are overzealous, they will overshoot, and they won't have any virgins left to requeen the colony. And they will do that, won't they, Vernon?
Yes, they will. That's a great way to start out your beekeeping journey.
It just popped in my head, that happened to you, yeah.
But you know what? The second one beside it, I mean, I figured out and we resolved that, but the one beside it was absolutely perfect the whole time. Both nukes from Saponi Creek. One swarmed I was too late adding space, and that's on me. This year, every year now, it's February 14th. That's what I do for Valentine's Day, is add space to bees. But it's a good way to remember it. But no, both of them identical, put in the same day, same resources, just amazing. One swarmed itself to death and the other one did fantastic. And it's still rocking and rolling, years later.
Unhealthy hives, they're really languishing. You're going to notice an unhealthy hive because they're just not bringing in honey, they're not growing. You're like, what on earth is wrong with this box? And it may become a black hole where you keep taking from that healthy hive and adding to that unhealthy hive and nothing changes. Cut it off. I don't know how to fix an unhealthy hive if we don't know what's wrong with it, so just combine it and then make splits out of that healthy hive. We're still looking in these boxes every 2 to 3 weeks, making sure they're clean right, making sure the resources are good. If they're backfilling that brood nest, you know swarms are coming, so having a little bit of empty drawn comb or, rearranging the combs. We can checkerboard this time of year. So you can put an empty comb slap in the middle of the brood nest, and they'll just draw it out and keep right on going. Later in the season, you can't do that, you can't get away with it, but now you can do some checkerboarding. We're managing the room as a 2-part deal. Gotta look out for that brood nest, and we have to look out for the honey storage, pests and pathogens. Usually life is good in May, New beekeepers are like, my bees are great, I'm out here in a tank top and shorts and flip-flops, and I don't have to wear a veil, and the bees are beautiful, and every day looks so healthy, and they're growing. May's just a great time to be a beekeeper. But then there's small hive beetles. So small hive beetles have overwintered with our colonies, and by May, we are really beginning to see them proliferate. So this is an IPM strategy for small hive beetles, including the prices from just a couple months ago. Small hive beetles can potentially be expensive to manage, especially if you're getting things like a West trap, which is a replacement bottom board that you put a little fly in that is very fancy. It's almost $30. It can be very time consuming. I flip off every inner cover and I stand there for 5 minutes smashing hive beetles. Very time consuming. It's definitely an investment in manpower. The worst one I ever had to do was, I was working for Best Bees and we had this client, she was like, don't let them die. There were more hive beetles in the box than there were bees. There was no pollen, no honey, no brood, just bees walking around completely demoralized. And she was like, don't let them die. So I sat up a table and I took each individual frame out of the box, shook it onto the table and smashed the hive beetles, and then put the frames back in. When I got to the one with the queen, I just plucked her off and put her back in. And then at the end, I let all the bees walk back into the box. And I only gave them like 3 frames. There were so many bees crammed on those frames because I really wanted them concentrated. And they survived. They did terrific. But nobody really wants to do that because that's too much. That's not enjoyable. But there's lots of cool things. The one that I like best is the one I picked up. This is another Bob shout out. The correlated plastic. So if you go around after 3 days after election day, when the election signs are now litter and not election signs, collect a couple of them, cut them down into little squares. I actually use Scotch tape on one end so that when I put my finger over the end of it, I can see in the back to see if there's any beetles in it. Because then I'll carry it away, tap it out and smash the beetles and toss it back in. But the bees want to trap those beetles. That is their biology. So anything on here that's cheap and allows the bees to follow their biology is a great investment. June, Southern Magnolias. Most fun is watching bees roll around in huge, big magnolia blooms. Crepe myrtles are now blooming. The first crepe myrtles that typically will bloom are white ones, and I think the bees really like the white ones a lot. They're on their second bloom now. We're just seeing the finishing of their second bloom. There's sumac, and at this point we're seeing the American elderberry. When you start seeing elderberry bloom on the roadside, that should signal to you that a huge flow is coming to an end. Things are really quickly going to kind of trickle down to just a real small flood. Healthy colonies have huge populations. These are these 80,000, 100,000 bee populations. They're finishing off the supers. The unhealthy colonies are just sitting there and doing nothing, and you're looking at them thinking, maybe next month it'll turn it around. We're going to start pulling honey. You don't have to be very strong to pull honey if you want to pull it a frame at a time. I like to pull honey a frame at a time. I use deep supers. So I will super my boxes at home with deep boxes, but then I can't pick them up because they're way too heavy, which is good to have my husband Steve. But what I do is take the frames out one at a time. I will harvest frames one at a time, then replace those frames and let them finish the others. So as soon as the frames are finishing I'm pulling them out, putting them in the freezer, get enough to spin, I might spin them. But you can take a frame by frame, you can take a box by box, wet frames. Once you have spun out that honey, that sticky, empty frame is called a wet frame. And you want to put that back in the box, and you want to, in the late afternoon, as late as you can, put that on the colony for the bees to get up there and clean it all out. And they may refill it. If you're taking it early in the season, they could refill it. If you decide that you don't want to put your wet frames back on a colony, please do not put them out near your colonies. The strategy that I use, if I'm going to put out anything with honey on it, so let's say I'm extracting and I want to put the lids out because all the honey ran down and they're on the lids, my bees are on one side of my property line. So bees run from the top of the property line all the way to the bottom, and I'll put any honey over here. Because I don't want any colonies in the line of fire of that honey.
How big is the property?
8 acres, yeah. So I have 8 acres, the bees run down the western line, and anything wet that I put out on the eastern property line. So if you've got a row of bees, and you put wet frames at the end of the row, those colonies at the end are gonna get brought down. Because when the box is empty, the rest of the bees getting the message for where to go, they're gonna go to the next closest location looking for, the reason they were sent there. Monthly inspections, so we switched over. We're all done with that nectar stuff. Now we're gonna switch to some monthly inspections. We're gonna make sure they're queen right. We're gonna make sure, they have resources, that's for you, because it should be a full box. We're still managing room and we're still managing pests and pathogens. Now, I didn't talk much about splitting, but I do love early in the season, when the queens are still in the top box, I like to take the queen and make a split. Leon actually came out this year and helped me with that. We basically took 5 frames, we found the queen in the top box, we took 5 frames out, and we put them in a new colony, and we replaced the frames, and those big colonies replace their queens. If you do it early enough in the season, you still have plenty of time to get honey for the honey flow. At this point in time, now you can make a split just by taking some frames of brood and food and putting them in another box and letting them raise and get clean. Wax moths show up. So around the end of June, if you have any dead outs, wax moths are gonna find you. This is the IPM for that. Obviously, you just want nice healthy colonies and you don't want anything to go wrong. Freeze your frames before you store them. So if you've had wet frames, you put them on a colony, the bees clean them up. When you take them off, then you can put them in the freezer. At this time of year, or in June, you can still store them in a well-lit, well-ventilated space, but not for long. Because by the time we get to July and August, the wax moths are desperate to procreate, and they'll be putting stuff everywhere. Sertan is the B402, is a bacillus bacteria that inhibits their reproduction. 5 ounces sounds like a lot of money for $41, but you water it down, it actually goes pretty far. Although I know one beekeeper that mixed it too strong and even his bees wouldn't use the comb. Bob, what was I know you used it before you went to Florida a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it seemed to be okay. I freeze them and everything else. Freezing is my biggie. I really use that a lot. And then I put it in, that sort of like 80-liter tote with the gasket on it and the 6 clamps. So it's frozen, take it out of there, put it in that one, seal it up. That gives me some more freezer space, and then I just hang in there until I'm ready to use that super again.
And how long should they be frozen?
Couple days.
2 days, 3 days?
Three.
Does it
Yeah.
matter?
And the,
Three.
the Sertan, you mix it 1 part of Sertan and 19 parts of water.
That's right. Yeah, it really goes a long way.
3, 2, 4.
But there's no instructions for how many squirts to put on your frame.
Yeah, I squirt a lot on my frames.
Yeah, so I have like studied and studied and studied, like, you know, is that good? Or is that good? I don't know. There's
At one time I was told to wet liberally.
Literally wet proof it.
And then I leave them out to dry for a couple of days
Yeah,
before I put them in my basement so that they don't get mildewed.
Yeah. So, a lot of people use Sertan, I don't use Sertan, I do use Paramount. Paradichlorobenzene. The only person I know that really says that, quickly in this room is Kirby, unless somebody else does, and I just haven't heard you say it yet. But Kirby can like say it. 5 pounds will run you about $90. I usually get a big 5-gallon bucket full, and that lasts a year. That's at work. Now, I fell down on the job and I missed replacing my Paramount in July, and I lost a stack of 4 dupes to moths, and I mean, they cleaned those things well. So you have to stay on the Paramount. The club owns, Lori's neighbor had an outdoor colony in a bush that was just inches off the ground, and who went over? Bill went over. Buddy, were you there?
Bill and Buddy and I.
Yeah, so the 3 of them got these bees. Lori rehomed the bees. Bill put the open air hive into a box that the club, you know, we bring that out, you know, for special occasions. But we have to keep Paramount on hand because we've got to put Paramount in that box all the time to keep the wax moths from taking it away from us. All right, so in July, clover is blooming, Vitech. When you guys are driving down to Sef's and you're going past the new Cherry Hospital, that certain time of year when all those lavender, the little short lavender trees are blooming, that's Vitech. I love that.
It's also called chaste.
Chase, like as in,
Yes.
Great myrtles are still blooming, the southern magnolias. And this is my favorite time of year because in July we begin to see the soybeans bloom and the cotton starts to bloom. We still have some sumac out there. Cotton is the best because it has extra floral nectaries. So they're not going to the flower, they're going to the extra floral nectaries. For years and years, nobody thought bees worked soybeans because they have this itty tiny flower and it's underneath. But there is evidence that they are in the soybeans on those little bitty flowers on some of the varietals. Healthy colonies, they're doing their job. Unhealthy colonies, they're looking pitiful by July. You're going to attend the NCSDA meeting. This is the summer meeting time. Come with your entries for the honey show. You want to order flower and trees from the North Carolina Forestry Service. The North Carolina Forestry Service store opens on July 1, and you go online and you pick out your pollinator-friendly trees. You can buy 10, you can buy 100. They come as little seedlings. This year, I have bought 100 Chickasaw plums. So I'll be doing that this fall.
Do they produce plums?
Huh?
Do they produce plums?
Plums, yeah, sure do.
Are they the ones on Claridge Nursery Road?
Yes. Yes, so it's an awesome thing because some people in North Carolina have to order from the Forestry Service and then they gotta pay for the shipping. But but the, nursery is in Pikeville. So we can just ride down there and pick up our order. And you got that crazy woman down there with the wild hair, she's been there for years. We're still harvesting the honey, and we're still doing the monthly inspections. We're making splits. This is a great time to make splits because the boxes are so full of bees, you can make splits all day long. It's plenty warm at night, so it's easy for them to maintain the brood temperature. August comes along, what's blooming? Ragweed. I know your allergies are not liking it, but the bees are loving it. It's a great pollen source. Soybeans and cotton. Almost all of the top blooms, when you're riding down the road, you can see blooms on the top of the cotton now, which means they're done. Crepe myrtle's still going, sumac, some of the late sumac. We are back into swarm season. So here we are in our bimodal swarm season. This one is a little bit smaller, but most of you, if you've got really full boxes of bees, your bees are either swarming now or they're thinking about swarming now. Unhealthy colonies are usually gonna perish at this time, or they're gonna get robbed out, but they're just not going to be able to, sit next to that colony that's gigantic and live. In August, we talk a lot about the dearth, and the dearth is weather dependent. So if this is your first year of having bees, please hear me when I say, this year, totally wild, completely unusual. We had 80-degree temperatures in February, we had no late cold snaps, we had early hot temperatures, but we have had rain every single week since April. It was still raining out there today with the sun just shining, it's still raining. So really, really unusual. And although you may have had a dearth, as in the nectar flow was over, I'm still seeing shakeout. So when I pull up a frame and I see the nectar and I shake that frame, I'm still seeing it sprinkle. That's called shakeout. That means fresh nectar. I'm still seeing that in the colonies. But last year, if you recall, we had the drought.
It didn't rain in Wayne County in June last
Yeah.
year, cause it crushed the corn crop.
It was so dry, and I think at work I had like 4 or 5 boxes
This year it is.
die of hunger. None of them had any brood because the queens completely shut down until I started feeding them. Just FYI, when I started last year working in Raleigh, I did not realize, and it was a really dumb thing for me not to realize, that I had no benefit of soybeans and cotton. So my bees at home are looking pretty good, even though it was really dry. They were looking pretty good and I didn't have to feed them. My bees at work were dying like crazy because they don't have any agricultural land. There's no cotton, there's no soybeans. It makes a huge difference where you live. We have pulled the honey. It is August, so guess what? It's winter time. Winter preparation. Winter preparation starts in August. Just as soon as I get that honey pulled, I'm like, ooh, it's time to prepare for winter. We're almost there. At least that's what I'm thinking when I got my honeybee brain in. And when I say winter preparation, I'm talking about all that checkerboarding. If they haven't drawn it out, you need to start moving those frames to the edge and get them out of the middle. They won't draw them out. If they haven't drawn them out by August, they are not going to. So unchecker them. Even better, as we get closer to cold weather, replace that undrawn comb with drawn comb so that they can store some of that sugar water that you give them. Reduce them down to a reasonable size. Don't make every bee in the box have to become a guard bee. You'll be very unhappy walking around in your yard if you do. I have one on the back of my arm to prove that. That's from today. Monthly inspections. You can still make splits. It is still perfectly fine to make splits in August. All right, so here we are. We're coming to the end of summer, and what we see is our population is beginning to dwindle, but this yellow line is the mite population, and they are still increasing. So if you're not thinking about mites, you're kind of in trouble, because the mites are getting ready to like just explode out at the same time the numbers of bees are dwindling. So what can you do in the summertime? You can do Baroxan, but you can do Baroxan at other times of the year too. I would put Baroxan on this slide because I've only played with it once so far. Anybody else using Baroxan on a regular? I know Judy Smith uses it a lot, and she really likes it. Anybody else using Baroxan?
I'm gonna do it tomorrow.
Yeah, put some on.
Try.
And
Just
I'm-
use the regular oxalic acid on sponges.
yeah, they're kind
instead
of cardboardy.
Instead of brand.
Oh, you're doing the,
That's-
gotcha,
yeah,
gotcha.
Swedish
You're doing the
sponges.
glycerin and the.
Glycerin and-
oxide, yeah.
Which I guess is what Roxanne is, isn't it?
Yes, yes, it's like a brown,
Yeah.
thicker cardboard stuff. And it tells you to like hang them over the sides. But a lot of beekeepers that I've talked to that hang them over the frames, they lose that as brood nest because they won't lay underneath the Baroxan. So most people that I talk to are like laying them diagonal across the
Top.
top bars. My favorite go-to in the hot season is Apogard. I'm using Thymol. And we can use Amitraz. Amitraz at this time of year is good, but everybody knows about Amitraz. Commercial beekeepers, some of them lost 100% of their bees. Commercial beekeepers are really going to have some interesting bottom lines in the next couple of years. Catastrophic losses, about 65% of the commercial bees. Now, this is a really big deal because ordinarily it's the hobbyists who are losing the most bees. And this is the first time in history we had it flip, where the commercial guys are losing their bees. So, my secret crush, Zach Lamas, he's from North Carolina. Dr. Lamas out of USDA went down, they took a bunch of samples. A guy named Frank Rinkovic had been looking at Amitraz resistance in mites, and basically has not had a sample of mites without at least some kind of resistance in a couple of years. So we have now overused Amitraz, and the huge die-off in the commercial bees is Amitraz resistant mites vectoring virus, and their bees are dying of the virus. Huge amounts of deformed wing virus type B, which is worse than type A. Lots of paralytic viruses, just terrible. A lot of guys are gonna go out of business for that.
I mean, if you just model it off of antibiotic therapy and medicine,
That's right,
there shouldn't
exactly right.
be any surprise at that finding.
That's right, and, you know, the commercial guys, they really wanted it to be something else.
Yeah.
You know, they wanted the magic new virus, or, they wanted something else. Because if you've got 30, 50, 60,000 colonies, you are not running down to the local bee supply to buy a box of formic product. You can't pay for that. You cannot bring your H2A workers into the country and pay all of their expenses and treat all of these colonies with Formic Pro and Guard and all of these other things. Don't have the manpower to get out there and do all these cultural and mechanical things because there's just too many bees. So, you have to ask yourself, is the sky falling for beekeeping? I don't know. I don't really think so. Norroa is getting ready to come to market, and Norroa is an RNA inhibitor that you feed to your bees, and then when it's expressed in the royal jelly, it interrupts the reproductive cycle of the varroa mite. Your varroa mite can't have babies. So that's a really cool thing. EPA is pushing that through. There is another formulation of Apivar that is going to go, it's like Apivar 2, that's gonna hit the market. But people are working really hard on mite treatments, whether it's combining them in different ways, or EPA is getting ready to increase the allowed oxalic acid in OAB. So it's gonna increase the numbers. That's thanks to Cameron Jack and all the work he's done out in Florida for years. So I don't really think the sky is falling. The sky won't really be falling until we hit triple A labs. And then we might have a little bit of trouble. But triple A labs is very, very vulnerable to formic pro or formic acid. So maybe it won't be that bad. September rolls around. Goldenrod is blooming. If you are looking at the ditch banks now, you are already seeing goldenrod. There's like half a dozen varietals, and they'll start blooming like July, and they'll bloom all the way through until the frost. Love goldenrod, but when you pop the top on your colony, it smells like stinky feet. So you know if you have goldenrod, you'll pop the top and be like, oh, that smells terrible. Aster is another one. I love the aster, and what I love about the aster is that when it first blooms, the only thing that has a long enough tongue to get in it is the butterflies. So I have about a week of all of my aster weeds covered in butterflies, and then the following week, the blooms are fully open, and then little short-tongued bees can get in there, and then they're all full of bees. Healthy colonies are rearing winter bees in September, and they're still swarming. Right under your nose, they're still swarming. Unhealthy colonies are dwindling, and they're very dysfunctional. You open up that box, they look dirty, they look disorganized, they're just wandering around, and you're like, what are you doing? You look terrible. They all look like they have a hangover. Do something about them, don't let them go. Do sign up for the Wayne County Agricultural Fair. It is a huge amount of manpower for us to do that. We sold about $6,000 worth of honey last year, so it takes a lot of work. And if you wear your shirt, usually by the second night, you're just like waving us through. And I'm like, yeah, come on, man, you're working here. So it's not so hard to get in. Maybe the first couple of nights they'll harass you about a ticket, and we do have some tickets that we get, but after that they're like, yeah, you're wearing the shirt, go ahead. Winter preparation is in full swing. Those boxes need to be heavy. You're checking them, you know, anything that's light. If you guys were out, some of you were out in Clayton with me, and that is the one thing I heard loud and clear was almost everybody said, there's not a lot of food in these boxes, Kim. So I gotta get them fed. And I have to do that in the next couple of weeks. Now, I hear people, I've heard this a lot in the last couple of weeks from our members about swarms, but I am here to tell you my favorite swarm in the whole wide world is a September swarm. No other batch of bees works harder than a September swarm. You put them in a box, you give them a little bit of drawn comb, and you give them some syrup, and they will go like gangbusters. They're wonderful bees, and they'll automatically have a lower mite load going into winter, which is always good. You're still doing your inspections monthly. October comes along, your healthy colonies are full of bunch of bees. They are consolidating the nest, and they're consolidating their resources. They're putting everything where they want it, so don't think you know better. Try to let them consolidate it how they would like it, unless you see a really, really bad problem. Unhealthy colonies are getting their affairs in order. They know that they're getting ready to, have a bad time of it. You're going to go to the North Carolina State Fair, and maybe you work selling honey. maybe you work at the information booth, and you're going to do last chance inspections. In October, you can't find a queen anywhere, unless maybe you know Carrie, you might have a spare. How many spare queens you got right now, Carrie?
None, really. I take one out my box, no problem. No problem.
You got the money.
So.
$100 to have you
I
on
was
the
gonna say how
board.
much you ought to pay for it. Be really, really careful that you are not looking for that queen. Don't spend a whole lot of time in that box, just like, yep, I see eggs, I'm good to go. Because if you mess up, you have to combine that colony. Their time is done come October. November, we're still seeing henbit, dead nettle, dandelion, clover, goldenrod. So the bees are out there storing their pollen for the next spring. They're definitely getting ready for cold weather. And they'll do plenty of flying on warmer days for cleansing flights and foraging. It is not that cold here where we live, y'all, so the bees are pretty active. Unhealthy colonies, saying their prayers. December, same kind of thing. Unhealthy colonies really hanging on by a thread. In December, you can go down to the Clares Ridge nursery and pick up your order that you placed in July, and you can plant all your trees. That's when they actually are available for pickup.
Will you go back to November, just for a second? Yeah. Hold on. Thank you.
You're gonna be thinking about mine management in December, and you can do emergency inspections. Just to, if you get a box that, you think you can save, you can still inspect them on the one day. You are here, we are down there, everybody's dormant. Mites are dormant, bees are dormant, everybody's dormant. Yeah, Bob's in Florida.
Bob dormant.
Alright, so at this time of year, you can use oxalic acid. This is kind of your cleanup treatment from your apiary, which may not have gotten good penetration if you had a really big colony. It might have given you a knockdown, but really not a good treatment. So you can do oxalic acid with vaporization or a dribble. Now, if you search for the Auburn Winter Cat Brood Project, what you will find is, last year, every 2 weeks from October to March, I had 10 boxes that I did full inspections on all winter long. I know, right?
I'm from Omaha, there's no way you're opening the winter.
No big deal. I had a 4-day window, I picked the best weather, and all of the days, I think I only had a couple days that were in the 50s, most days were in the 60s. I just had perfect weather lineup for my 4-day window. The bees that I were working with were in a horseshoe of trees, and then at the opening to the trees, there was a big mound of dirt, so they were well protected. I'll be doing that again this year, but here's the bad news. So everything from the North Carolina line north, they go broodless. Everything from about Fayetteville south, they have brood all winter long. And everything in between the black bars is maybe, maybe not. We live in a very transitional geography where some years we're gonna have brood all winter long, other years we're gonna go broodless. So it is my recommendation that you do it as a series. Pick whatever series you like. Every 5 days for 5 times, every 7 days for 4 times. Just pick a series and do your oxalic acid for the whole brood cycle so that you are getting all the way through the cycle, because we don't know what it's going to be. You can also use Viroxan, which is a good thing. Viroxan can stay in the colony for 52 days. wanting to work on their subspecialty, it's 10 hours of volunteer time minimum. The subspecialty is the thing where you're a journeyman beekeeper and you're getting ready to go to master beekeeper, you have to have a bunch of subspecialties. If you are just interested in doing, like a service point, you wanna just come out for a day and, put down that you have one service point to go from certified to journeyman, you can do that too. But I am able to facilitate people coming out and helping me with the bees at NC State. In the spring through the summer, I run about 200 colonies, and in the winter, I run about 100 colonies, and that difference in the 100 colonies is because we're rearing queens. So we do a big queen rearing operation early on for all of our research projects, and I am more than happy to have you guys come and help me. Eugene came, Leon came, and Jane came last week, but I had about 15 people from all over the state that have come to help me the last 2 weeks because we did mite checks, we did mite treatments, we did inspections,
And
working
Kirby
on
too.
winter prep.
Kirby too, right?
Yes, Kirby and Judy came on a different day. They came over to the Dixie's in Raleigh. So yeah, you guys are more than welcome to come and hang out. I always do it as groups, so there's no pressure to perform. You don't have to know everything. When you do it as a group, it's a lot more fun. But yeah, do reach out if you're interested in working on the research piece. Any other questions? Anything anybody wants to add? Anything that I missed that you think is important?
I'd add one thing about April Guard, if you're thinking about doing it soon, do not be alarmed if you notice they go broodless for a couple of weeks, they will come right back. It'll scare the heck out of you.
Yes, and they'll go, when you put in those 2 pads of former pearl in the spring,
Yeah.
you'll have a gap in the root, and they'll go broodless, and you'll have a gap.
Kim, I wanna add something.
But, hang on,
If you guys.
Leon, hold on a second.
I'm sorry.
I read a couple things about the 5G towers are closing. Anybody else heard about this?
So that is something that comes up a lot. And Jamie Ellis down at the University of Florida, routinely looks at that. There is currently no research to support if there's anything in particular going on. Right now it's anecdotal, and there's not a biological reason that he sees why those towers should be harming bees.
What was the question?
5G towers are harmful to bees. Jamie Ellis in Florida will tell you he doesn't know of a biological reason why they should harm the bees, and nobody's done that research yet. So maybe someone will do the research, or maybe you're looking for a project. Leon.
So what I would like to say to everybody is that, Kim is a wealth of knowledge. When you go to work with her, you can get sort of like personal time when you go by yourself, like I did one day on Wednesday, just Kim and I. And so I could ask any question I want to, and Kim is able to help me. But the real deal is that she works almost 7 days a week. But on Saturdays, when she goes to the Seth yard, or she comes out here, and help us look at the bees, that's her personal time. And so when we help her, we're helping ourselves. She doesn't charge us to go out to the Seth yard. She doesn't charge us to come out here to look at these bees. That's her personal time. And so when we can help her, we're helping the club to get better. We're helping ourselves to manage our bees better as beekeepers. So I just wanted to put that plug in for Kim, not that she needs a toot, but she works hard and she does need a toot. So thank you, Kim, we appreciate you for all you do.